Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session on dispute avoidance mechanisms for a better construction delivery. I am Yasemin Çetinel. I'm a lawyer practicing in Turkey and specialize in construction law. I also served as country representative for Dispute Resolution Board Foundation, which is the International Association for Dispute Boards, which is the subject matter concept for this session. Okay, so my presentation will be dealing with how to avoid disputes in a construction project and to deliver the construction project accordingly, more timely, more efficiently. In order to start with elaborating the dispute avoidance concept, I think we first need to address the dispute definition. So what is a dispute? As you know, in construction projects, we use usually some standardized form of contracts. And one of these standardized form of contracts is FIDIC books. As well as we have internationally prominent institutions such as International Chamber of Commerce that have some certain rules for arbitration, for mediation, and for dispute boards as well, in which we can have some relevant explanations on as to what a dispute is. So one of the examples that I usually prefer to use in order to explain a dispute is coming from FIDIC Gold Book 2008 edition, which says, a dispute is, and I quote, any situation where A, one party makes a claim against another party, B, the other party rejects the claim in whole or in part, and C, the first party does not accuse, provided, however, that a failure by the other party to oppose or respond to the claim in whole or in part may constitute a rejection if, in the circumstances, the DAB or the arbitrators, as the case may be, deem it reasonable to do so. End of quote. So from this quite detailed explanation, the first feedback is that in order to talk about a dispute, we need to have a certain series of events, escalation of issues. Simple disagreements at party level, at project level, do not actually constitute a dispute. I also usually refer to the dispute board rules of ICC, International Chamber of Commerce, whereby it is defined as any disagreement that is formally referred to a dispute board for a conclusion under the terms of the contract and pursuant to Article 18 of the rules. So here again, we are talking an elaborate, an already elevated type of issues that becomes a formal referral before a dispute board in order to qualify as a dispute. So disputes are, as a conclusion, disagreements between the parties and that could not be solved at the outset and that have to be referred to another mechanism in order to have a resolution. Then, what is a typical dispute consisting of at project site level for construction contracts? To my mind, and of course from experience, both at site level and at dispute resolution level, Very usual type of disputes are concerning interpretation of contract provisions. So there may be ambiguities in the contract. There may be also gaps in the contract documentation to be filled in. And these contract documentation may consist not only of the general and or particular conditions of the contract, but also the technical parts, the schedules of the contract as well. It is very, very common that we have, for example, BOQ item related ambiguities that come and evolve as disputes in construction projects. Another very usual and common problem is on the quality of the work, so defects, whether in the defect liability periods or before the performance and delivery is done. Also, progress and resources in the project, whether adequate or inadequate level. A very substantial and core dispute subject matter is also delay in the project, of course, and all the triggering issues of liquidated damages, sometimes penalties, and any other kind of damages because of delay, or prolongation costs for contractors when the delay is actually not attributable to the contractor's performance of the contract. And lastly, of course, and very core substantial matter again, is the payment-related disputes, which may significantly affect the project because of the cash flow-related impact on the contractors. So, we have elaborated what a dispute is, what are the typical examples of nature of disputes in a construction project. And now, from the general perspective, how we can actually prevent issues to become disputes at a project at hand and at a particular project. Now, what we see at the end of the line, let's say as disputes, needs careful consideration, firstly at the outset of the project, which is, of course, it starts with the tender phase, pre-contract signature phase. So I always advise that the first issue to consider, always have a articulate, mostly simple and fairly allocating risk type of contract in order to properly perform the works later on after the signature time. So therefore, my first point is always choose your contract well. I mean, of course, choose the type of contract and also draft and negotiate the contract well, fitting the circumstances, fitting to the type of the project, fitting to the estimated contract schedule. And as I said, and I cannot stress enough, with a fair allocation of the risk, whereby the risk is allocated to the party who can the most and the best handle the risk for that specific type of risk. So not a contract should put all the risk on the employer or on the contractor alone. The risk should be allocated to the entity who can handle it better than the other party. So, of course, there is no such thing as a perfect contract for a party. So there will be some risk, and that risk should be priced at the outset of the contract at the tender stage and properly priced into the bid. Because once we can estimate and reflect it to the contingencies in the contract or to our unit prices or to the lump sum pricing method of the contract. When that risk actually is realized at the performance phase, it will be easy for the cash flow of the contractor to carry out and defeat that risk than when there is no such contingency is done and the cash flow of the contractor is heavily affected at some point to the point of bankruptcy, even in case of course, large infrastructure projects. Then after the tender stage, after the signature of the contract, of course, we don't leave it there and we execute the contract, perform the contract and manage our contract with proper notices, with proper cost control mechanisms and everything in real time at project site. And for that, I always advise that the personnel dealing with the especially contract management issues should be properly trained, should know the contract type, should know the notice requirements, and should be proactive enough in order the dispute prevention techniques to be triggered and properly used as well. So, but despite all of these, of course, I will say it will be impossible for a project not to have any issues, any disagreements to arise between the parties. So, therefore, last and perhaps the strongest component of all these dispute prevention techniques is appearing as the usage of dispute boards and the proper usage of dispute boards in any given project of a certain size, of course. So I always refer, and the subject of this discussion is anyhow the dispute board usage for better construction delivery. So I did not define a dispute board concept yet. So what is a dispute board actually? There's a good definition I generally use in our workshops or trainings as well. I define a dispute board as an intermediate dispute resolution mechanism established at the outset of the project and remaining in place until the end of this project, whereby board members, or of course, sometimes it may be only a sole dispute board, with the expertise of the relevant construction sector, becomes a team member and constantly assists parties with issues at site through meetings and site visits. This is the avoidance part and avoidance duty of the dispute board. And upon request, provide prompt recommendations or decisions whenever a dispute arises. So, a couple of highlights from this definition is that dispute boards should be what I call standing dispute boards for a better and proper performance, because it is only possible to prevent issues to become disputes only if the dispute board is in place at the outset and comes to the site regularly with site visits, and hence in a position to assess a potential dispute or issue discussed in site visits with the dispute board, to alert the parties to this fact, to encourage the parties to discuss about the issue, and for potential amicable settlement discussions between the parties. Also to advise and suggest the parties that the dispute board gives informal opinions on the subject in order to facilitate the amicable settlement, amicable resolution discussions between the parties. So it is only with this proactive role, proactive presence of the boards that the dispute boards may actually serve as a prevention technique at site. I am emphasizing it because, as you may know, and I'm not sure how many of you actually experienced a dispute board process before, but the usual thing is, in order to cut cost savings, to have ad hoc dispute boards in the project, whereby they are only empowered if and only if there is a dispute between the parties. And let's remember, the dispute is the last point at the line. So there is an issue between the parties that evolved to a claim that could not be solved. And so during that whole process, that the issue is becoming like a snowball, if I may say so, the ad hoc dispute board is not present to guide the parties, to help the parties. So therefore, I personally think that ad hoc dispute boards are not the best practice for this concept at all. And standing dispute boards should therefore be preferred for efficient results. So, by the way, I just want to remind that I have a detailed paper on this submission, and for those who are interested, I may, of course, provide a copy if you send me an email for this request. So we have defined what a dispute board is, and now with the concepts in mind, and for the dispute and for the dispute boards, I would like to give a couple of examples of best practices, if I may say so, for an efficient dispute board process. So first and foremost is the issue of early appointments of the board. So I personally and from experience believe that the standard FIDIC regulation on the subject, which only allows the parties a very short period of time to appoint the boards after the commencement date, is there for a reason. Because as contractor, as employer and the engineer, the dispute board also should be present at site and in the project, and should be regularly informed about the project from the very beginning. Of course, not all the projects are superstructure projects, but I really, by way of analogy, consider it like if you don't see the foundations, it will be very hard to understand the roof of a building as a whole. So the dispute board appointment should be when the foundations are actually being built in a project. This is of course by way of analogy, but in a lot of separate projects, there are a lot of claims related to foundations or any kind of works that are later on covered. It is really a unique feature of the dispute board that the dispute board, as a first-hand experience, knows and sees the work that is later on covered, because dispute board is making site visits, which is my second point, of course, for the best practices. So early appointment is a very core issue for the dispute board to start getting informed and to be present in the project, to be able to have the general and always updated idea on the technical side of the project. It also serves to another purpose, because as I always say, the dispute board process is highly dependent on creating trust between the parties and between the parties and the dispute board. So the dispute board, if early appointed, will have sufficient time to create this reliance, this trust feeling between the parties and towards itself as well, so that once the dispute board's recommendation or informal opinion or decision feature is activated, the result, the product of the dispute board is highly respected, because once you trust the capacity, the expertise, and the of course the impartiality of your dispute board, the given decision, recommendation, or informal advice will be very important for you to consider, because it will come from a very highly respectable expert in the field, and the parties will know that one way or the other, if the issue goes into dispute, or even goes after dispute board goes to the ultimate dispute resolution process, it will be more or less producing the same approach as the dispute board recommendation or advice or decision. So early appointment is very important. The second issue is to keep that early established contact regular. So as you know, FIDIC establishes a minimum 3 times visits per year to the site in order to have let's say a minimum contact with the people and contact with the actual works, because in every meeting there is a subsequent site visit to the site itself, whereby the board, as I told, is informed firsthand of how the works are actually carried out. So regular meetings and site visit is also a very important component of the dispute avoidance part of the issue, because in these meetings, the dispute board is allowing parties to discuss the current issues or the current stages of the project almost at a very free manner. So it serves as a platform whereby parties may have, apart from their daily contact at project level, a more elaborate and distant way of discussion, in one way moderated by the dispute board itself, because it's just for speaking out, discussing, and sometimes finding solutions for issues that are spotted in the projects and the works. I have personally seen several times meetings serving to the purpose of parties' mutual understanding of a point, whereby the same point was discussed at site level without the presence of dispute board, and that mutual understanding could not be reached. So there is this element of being a free discussion platform, a moderated platform, which helps the parties to get motivated into resolution in real time of the disputes. So therefore, I really consider it as one of the vital points of an efficient use for the dispute board process. And I should also mention that in COVID times now, although FIDIC's minimum site visit rule was 3 times per year, it was on the basis of that the board will actually in person visit the site. With the presence of much developed technology now, and with the COVID times huge impact on this technology's usage by people, I see there is no reason why parties may not gather every month virtually, very briefly, to have a short discussion in support of the site visits, and use the preventive feature of the dispute board even more frequently and at a lesser, of course, cost, because as you know, nobody travels, and everybody is joining from their own house, and it really serves at a very cost-cutting measure worldwide due to and thanks to COVID-19. So that was the other core point that I would like to very briefly mention. Now, I would elaborate the other 2 points together. The preventive techniques for the best and efficient use of dispute boards may be very important in cases where the issues relate to financial parts of the project. Indeed, as you know, in most of the FIDIC contracts, if it's not taken out by the particular conditions, there is a condition, subclause 2.4, stating that the contractor is entitled for sufficient evidence of the employer's financial strength. And if that evidence is not provided, contractor may ultimately suspend and even terminate the contract. Now, this is an important point because continuing with an financially unstable employer for contractors most of the time result in catastrophic problems. They have to self-finance, and at no point there is any agreement with the employer with regards to the future of the financial stability issue. It also goes with the late payments because it includes the requirement of contractor self-financing, at least partial self-financing, because of the period of the delay from the employer's part. Now, the referral to dispute boards in these issues would have the effect of an alert, or let's say switching the situation between the contractor and employer to another direction, because when it is for certain after the decision of the dispute board that the employer does not have any financial strength, or the late payment is actually highly attributable to the employer's failure to comply with the contract, it serves as a solid evidence for the contractor in, of course, cases where it is entitled for suspension and termination of the contract, not on a wrongful way. So therefore, as a dynamic, the decisions of boards in these respects switches the dynamic of the contract in favor of the cash flow of the contractor. And we have seen in many occasions that the existence of dispute boards, the existence of ability to resort to dispute boards, and in certain cases, the existence of a dispute board decision actually contributed to revitalize the project, sometimes which could have been resulted in bankruptcy or catastrophic circumstances for both of the parties. So in other words, parties got their act together because of that. And it is a perfect example of the efficient use of dispute boards. So it kind of serves as a balancing point of the contractual dynamic. We have, of course, many other suggestions and samples in our Dispute Resolution Board Foundation, we call it DRBF, website, and we have a manual on best practices all of you can download it from our website, and I am giving you the website address as follows. Lastly, I also would like to mention a little bit the dispute boards in practice. So the dispute board concept, of course, for Turkey is a very new concept, but it's not new worldwide. It is born in US and developed in America in general. However, it has been used internationally since mid-90s on the basis of our database. And actually, we have the database as the RBF of thousands of projects, and it is also downloadable, and in which we have the data for each project where we see that whether or not the project went ultimately to arbitration, whether or not there were any formal referrals made to dispute boards, and whether or not there were any informal referrals to dispute boards. It basically reflects, as a conclusion of these thousands of projects, and we are having the percentages as well, very few of the projects that used dispute boards went ultimately to arbitration. And usages of informal techniques usually decreased the usage of formal techniques of dispute boards. So overall, the dispute boards, of course, we assume that when served good, actually helped a better construction delivery worldwide as per our database. I really encourage you to take a look in the RBF's website and have the percentages. And a very highlighting example is that not only on a contractual basis between specific contractors and employers, recently we see, and as the RBF, we are consulted for the structuring of these panels. For example, in large projects like Olympic Games, where various construction projects are simultaneously performed before the games, started to use standing panels in order to have faster, efficient delivery, because in projects like in extremely time-sensitive projects like Olympic Games, no one has the luxury to go, of course, to litigation or arbitration. Everything should be solved the best way possible and the less time-consuming way possible. And the dispute boards were therefore greatly favored, and accordingly independent panels were built up and used effectively both in London and Rio Games so far. Also, for example, another for me very important project, it's the CERN project in Geneva, the Hadron Collider project underground. It's an immensely large project, and therefore a standing panel of dispute boards, let's say, of multiple disciplines, because as you know, it's an engineering and construction and at some point even physics knowledge required. So the panel is consisting of various disciplines, and it is in place for long years. Therefore, another very efficient use of the concept worldwide. I hope you enjoyed. It was a very specific presentation, but I will be very happy to answer any questions anybody may have. I'm giving my email, and I really hope that we will have some interest in the RBF as well, I will be very pleased to reply your questions. Have a good day.